This is the Cooler Masterkeys MK750. It's the new generation of Masterkeys keyboard and it's pretty interesting. Still uses Cherry MX switches, in this case Cherry MX Browns. We're going to take a look at it, so stick around. So first things first, a tour of what's in the box. You get the keyboard itself, the wrist rest, the removable USB Type-C cable, which is awesome to see, and some extra purple keycaps as well as a key puller, which includes the standard WASD. It also includes escape, the arrow keys, and that's pretty much it. Now, because I'm in the UK, this is a standard UK layout, which is perfectly fine with me. It does have some extra functions built into the F keys and the arrow keys, especially for lighting and macro support, although this does now have software support as well. And you also do have 4 extra keys, which by default are mapped to just volume and media controls. Now, with those 4 extra keys, you actually won't know which one does which until you plug the keyboard in and have the lights come on, because they are backlit keys with no actual etching on the keys themselves. And to mention, these aren't in any way sort of like display keys or something. If you change the functionality of them in the software, they still stay as the, you know, mute and pause and forward and backward buttons that they are illuminated as. Now, of course, the keyboard does support full RGB lighting, and that can be controlled via the software, and you can change lots of different options and, you know, patterns and stuff like that, or you can do it through the keyboard itself with the FN key and stuff like the arrow keys and the F keys, so you can kind of change it how you like. This is certainly an upgraded version of RGB compared to the Masterkeys Pro L that I have personally, but I don't know that this is necessarily the biggest selling point. I mean, obviously, if you care about RGB, as some people clearly do, then a nicer, you know, more smooth upgrade might be quite nice, but just to bear that in mind. And to complete our tour, on the back of the keyboard, you have a couple of feet that actually don't seem to have rubber ends at all, and I'll come on to that in a second. You also have a USB Type-C port, as well as some cable routing options for the detachable cable. You can either route it straight out, left, or right. Now, the keyboard does come with a wrist rest that is pretty thin. It doesn't really have too much padding to it, although it's not completely firm or completely solid. It has a little bit of padding to it and has a little bit of a sort of strange leatherette feeling surface, which does seem to pick up fingerprints pretty easily. The other thing that I'd mention is that the wrist rest, at least for my model, doesn't seem to be actually flat on the bottom, and means that it spins around quite easily, and it also just generally isn't the most comfortable. To compare it to the Razer Black Widow V2, the wrist rest that comes with that one is much nicer and is the one that I use personally, even with my Cooler Master keyboard. The typing experience on the keyboard itself is actually pretty good. Obviously, it's Cherry MX Brown switches, which are my personal favorites, although I do believe that they come in a couple of different switch types to suit your personal needs. But the one thing I would mention is that, as I mentioned, the feet that lift the keyboard up don't seem to have rubber tips on them, and again, this doesn't even seem to be quite straight, as there's a little bit of play in the top left and bottom right corners, so the keyboard kind of wobbles a little bit here, even like on a perfectly flat table surface, so that one's a little bit strange. I would also mention that the overall quality feel compared to the Masterkeys doesn't feel quite as nice. There's also a little bit more keyboard flex in this one versus the Masterkeys Pro L, so again, it feels like a very strange position and kind of place to go, especially considering the Masterkeys Pro L is actually £5 or £10 cheaper depending on where you look at the time of filming. When it comes to the gaming experience, I was pretty happy with this keyboard, barring the wrist rest itself, as that did mean that my arm was slipping around quite a lot, and also the keyboard did have a little bit more movement in it, just physically moving around on the table, than I would like, but otherwise the actual, you know, gaming experience itself was pretty pleasant. So what do I think of this keyboard? Well, I've been comparing it to the Masterkeys Pro L for the majority of this review, and that kind of makes sense, as they're basically the same keyboard in terms of pricing, in terms of layout, in terms of removable USB cables. So this one's Type-C, whereas the Pro L is micro USB, and obviously this one has sort of updated RGB abilities and stuff like that, but for me, I'm actually going to be going back to the Pro L. I've been using it since my initial review of it, and I personally really don't care for RGB that much. I mean, my RGB Pro L is white. That's what it's been basically since I did the review of it, and that's what this one would probably, actually, maybe not this one, because the whites on this one aren't that nice, but generally speaking, I either turn RGB off or I have it set to white, because Yeah, that's what I prefer. But if you are someone who values RGB, then this is certainly a nicer option. I don't know that I would necessarily recommend this, especially for the like wrist rest. It's nice that it's there, but the implementation of it just doesn't seem quite as good as some of the other offerings from, as I said, Razer and stuff like that. And overall, while it is a very nice keyboard, I can't really recommend it over the Masterkeys Pro L. So yeah, that's my recommendation. So with that said, moving on to the scoring. For me, this is going to be a 4 for 5 money. In terms of performance, it's going to be a 4.5, and in terms of functionality, I'm going to go with a 4.5 as well. When it comes to styling, for me, it is a pretty stylish keyboard, and it's going to be a 4.5 with a 4 for TechteamGB scoring and a silver award. It's a nice keyboard. It's certainly worth your money if you value RGB, and it's nice to see a Type-C port there too, but at the same time, the Masterkeys Pro L is personally a better keyboard, at least in my experience, and that's what I currently recommend. With that said, if you'd like to know any more about the keyboard or check out pricing when and where you watch this, take a look at the first link in the description down below. That'll take you to your local Amazon store where you can see pricing for you. And of course, if you want to support the channel and help me make these videos on a Monday, Wednesday and Friday basis, take a look at the Patreon link in the description down below, or Amazon and Overclockers UK affiliate links, which definitely help me out too. There's also the subscribe button if you're new to the channel, and of course there will be some other videos over here for you to check out, so feel free to take a look at those too. And otherwise, thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you all in the next video.